Welcome to Neural Nexus Podcast, where we explore the hottest topics shaping the world. Let's dive in.
Whoa, okay. So, did anyone else just, try to open TikTok and get, nothing? A big fat ban. Gone.
It is a pretty big deal, yeah. And, this whole thing has been kind of brewing for, forever, hasn't it?
Right. Years we've been hearing about this. But to actually ban it, poof.
Yeah.
It's wild. So today, we're going to try to figure out what exactly is going on, why this happened, what it all means, and what might happen next.
Yeah, definitely a lot to unpack. And where we're going to start with this is a CBS News article. It's called, Why is TikTok Banned? What's Behind the Law That Shuttered the App? And it came out today, January 19th.
Okay, so just to be clear, this isn't some random thing, right? This ban comes from a law, an actual law that Congress passed last year. And that law really put the squeeze on ByteDance.
ByteDance, right? TikTok's parent company over in China. Yeah, so basically the law was like, hey, ByteDance, you got to sell your part of TikTok to a company here in the U.S. or else.
Or else banned.
Banned, yeah. And the deadline for all this was, today, January 19th, the day before a new president's supposed to, take over.
It's like they waited until the last minute.
Total cliffhanger.
And so it seems like, at least for now, TikTok chose to just shut down. When you open the app, there's this message about the ban, and you can't even find it in the app stores anymore.
Nope, gone, poof. So I guess the question is why? Why'd they go to all this trouble to ban this one app?
Yeah, so many people use it, right?
Yeah.
Millions and millions.
Right, exactly. So basically, the big thing is national security. At the core of it, that's the issue. And U.S. officials, they're worried about the Chinese government using TikTok as a tool,
Okay, but how? What are they actually worried about?
Well, a couple of things. First, there's this whole idea of them taking all that data. You know how much information TikTok gets from everyone who uses it?
A lot, right?
Oh, tons. Basic stuff, sure. But also your location, where you go, what websites you look at. And they even have things like, facial recognition data.
Okay, yeah, now that is a little creepy. But don't other apps do that too?
True. And that's a bigger conversation, about privacy and all that. But with TikTok, there's this extra layer of worry because of China's laws. Over there, companies have to do whatever the intelligence agencies tell them.
So basically, they could force TikTok to hand over all that American user data, even if TikTok didn't want to.
Yeah. Even if they really didn't want to. And the FBI director, Christopher Wray, he's even said that he's worried TikTok software could be a way to, get into people's devices, compromise them.
Okay, yeah, it's starting to sound a little less like a fun dancing app and a little more intense.
Right. And then there's this quote from Representative Michael McCall. He said, TikTok's like a spy balloon in Americans' phones.
Okay, wow, that's pretty vivid.
Yeah, it definitely makes you think. And then there's the other side of it. It's not just about spying, but what people see. What if China starts controlling what shows up on your For You page?
Oh, so they're worried they'll hide stuff or boost certain things?
Totally. Influence, right. They could sway what Americans think and no one would even know it's happening.
That's kind of terrifying. So it's not just the data itself, but how they use it. And even how they use the app.
Exactly. To be fair, though, TikTok has been trying to deal with this for years, Back in 2022, they did this thing called Project Texas. They tried to, keep all the American user data on servers here separate from China.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that. It seemed like a good thing,
Yeah, seemed like they were trying, right. But the Justice Department, they weren't so sure. They thought some data could still, make its way back to China.
So Project Texas didn't convince them. And I guess the fact that both Democrats and Republicans were on board with this ban is kind of a big deal too, right?
Yeah, it wasn't just one side pushing for it, but that's not to say everyone's happy about it. The article mentions some, folks who thought it was a bad idea.
Oh, right. Like who?
Senators Rand Paul and Mark Warner, for example. They argued that this whole thing steps on free speech rights.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other debate, right?
Yeah.
Free speech versus security.
Totally. And get this, Trump, the guy who first tried to ban TikTok, well, he's back in the White House tomorrow, and he might actually be the one to save it.
Wait, what? How?
So this law, it actually lets him give TikTok a 90-day, timeout. And he kind of hinted that he might do it in an interview with NBC News yesterday.
Oh, wow. So TikTok's fate is kind of hanging by a thread right now. But before we get into what might happen next, we got to rewind and talk about another big thing. TikTok's fight at the Supreme Court.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They took it all the way to the top.
They did. So what happened?
Well, they fought hard, but in the end, they lost. The Supreme Court decided to keep the ban in place, and get this, it was unanimous.
Unanimous. Wow, that says something. So what was the main thing that swayed the court, made them decide that way?
It really came down to how much data TikTok collects. Like the government lawyer, Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar, she called it unprecedented. Like they've never seen anything like it. And she argued that all that data, it'd be super valuable to the Chinese government, especially because they have a history of, data breaches.
Yeah, right, like that huge hack a few years back. The Office of Personnel Management, millions of people's info got stolen.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, they're saying that this data is way too risky to let a foreign government get their hands on. And that argument, it really seemed to convince the court.
So the main issue for them wasn't even so much about, controlling what people see, but more about all that data being collected.
Right. That was the big thing for the Supreme Court. But, and this is where it gets interesting, they focused so much on that data collection part and not as much on that whole, what if they change what we see thing. I mean, what does that even mean for digital privacy in general? Should the government be watching over all social media?
That's a great question.
Hmm.
And it feels like this whole TikTok thing just opened up a can of worms that we haven't even begun to deal with. But you know what? Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back and unpack all of that. All right, so we're back. And before the break, we were talking about that Supreme Court decision, the one about TikTok, and how they were way more focused on the data collection than the whole controlling what we see thing.
Yeah.
It feels like this could have bigger consequences, right? Not just for TikTok.
Oh, yeah, for sure. This whole thing sets a precedent, and shows how the government might start looking at other social media too, especially if they're connected to countries that the U.S. sees as, competition.
So it's not really about TikTok at all. It's about how much power should the government have over what we see online, right? In this whole digital age.
Exactly. And this case, it really highlights that tension. How do you balance keeping things safe, national security and all that, with everyone's right to say what they want, to see what they want? It's tricky.
Yeah, no easy answers there. But let's go back to the data for a sec. We've talked about how much TikTok collects, but why is it so valuable? Why would a foreign government want it so bad?
Well, think about it. Imagine having a super detailed profile on millions of people, what they like, what they do, where they go, even their biometric data.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It is. And you
Yeah.
could use that for all sorts of things, like propaganda, spreading fake news to mess with people. Or you could even figure out who might be good to, spy for them or even blackmail.
Okay, now that's getting scary. But some people might say, well, I don't really care. I've got nothing to hide.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. But it's not really just about you, It's about everyone, protecting society as a whole from people abusing their power.
Right, because if they have all that info, they could use it to do all kinds of bad stuff.
Exactly. Think about it. They could mess with elections, cause chaos and division. And with China, there's that extra worry that they could use it to, push their own agenda, on a global scale.
So this is way bigger than just silly videos and dance trends.
Oh, yeah. This is about the future of our country, even democracy itself. And we've already seen this happen, in other places. Foreign governments using social media to mess with elections, spread lies.
Like that whole thing with Russia in the 2016 election, right? With Facebook and all that.
Exactly. And they're getting better at it all the time. It's not just about making up fake news anymore. It's about using your data to figure out what will push your buttons, what you're afraid of. Then they feed you exactly what you'll fall for.
That's messed up. So what can we even do about it?
Well, step one is knowing it's happening. We got to be more careful about what we believe online. Question everything.
Be more media literate, right?
Exactly.
Be able to spot the fake stuff.
Exactly. And we got to demand more from these companies, tell us what they're doing with our data. Be transparent.
And hold them accountable. Make sure they're actually protecting us.
Right. But can just be on us, as individuals. We need the government to step in, too, to make rules so that these companies are actually keeping people safe and protecting our rights.
It's like a three-way street, right? Us, the government, and the companies all have to do their part. But, okay, let's switch gears for a minute. We've talked about, the big picture stuff. But what about the people who actually use TikTok? What happens to them now?
Yeah, that's a good point. for a lot of people, especially young folks, TikTok is more than just an app, you know? It's like their community, a way to be creative. Some people even make a living from it.
There are people who, like, that's their job. They make videos, get sponsors, and now, poof, it's gone.
Yeah, it's like their whole world just got turned upside down. And it shows how important these platforms are becoming. Like, more and more people are using social media to make money, build businesses. So this ban, it makes you think about the future of work, you know? Like, what happens when your job depends on these platforms and then they just disappear?
It's kind of like if the government suddenly shut down, like, a factory or a mall, all those jobs gone.
Right. And even if you're not like a big time TikToker, it still sucks. You know, people connect on there, they share stuff, they have fun. To have that just ripped away.
Yeah, it's like losing part of your life, even if it was, like, mostly online. I remember when Vine shut down a few years back. It was just, like, silly 6-second videos, but people were bummed.
Yeah, totally. And TikTok is way bigger than Vine, so I bet this is going to hit a lot of people hard.
So what do they do now? Where do they go?
Well, a lot of folks are already heading to other apps, you know, like Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts. But it's not the same, right? Each app has its own, like, vibe, its own crowd.
It's like trying to fit in at a new school.
Exactly. And for creators, it's even harder. They got to start over, build a new audience, figure out how things work on this new platform.
It's a lot to deal with. But what about, like, the bigger picture? How does this whole ban affect social media in general?
Well, I think it's definitely good news for TikTok's competitors, right? Like Instagram and YouTube are going to be happy. They'll get a ton of new users. And maybe, I don't know, maybe that means we'll end up with like a bunch of smaller social media platforms instead of just a few huge ones.
So more choices.
Yeah, maybe. And, you know, competition is good, right? It could push these companies to do new things, be more creative.
So maybe some good could come out of this.
Maybe. But there's also, like, the flip side. What if other countries see this and think, hey, we can do that too?
Oh, so it could start, like, a trend of banning apps that governments don't like.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, good and bad, more choices, but also maybe more censorship. It's complicated. And it brings us back to that big question. How do we even deal with this new world where social media is so huge and governments are freaking out about it?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? And honestly, I don't think we have the answer yet. It's something we're all going to have to figure out as we go.
It's crazy, right? We
Yeah.
started talking about this one app, and now we're like down this rabbit hole of like the whole internet and what governments can do and even like people's jobs.
Yeah, that's kind of how these deep dives go. You know, you start with one thing and it just leads to all this other stuff.
It really is like that TikTok algorithm, huh? Like one minute you're watching a dog do a funny trick, and the next you're, I don't know, watching a lecture about like black holes.
Totally. But speaking of, algorithms and all that, this ban makes you wonder, like, what happens to TikTok now? Is it really gone for good?
Right.
Or could it, come back?
Yeah, like, is this really the end? Well, I mean, we did talk about how President Trump could give them that 90-day extension, right?
Right.
That would give TikTok some time to, like, either find someone to buy it or, figure out a way to make the government happy.
So there's still a chance, but I mean, really, what are the odds? Can they actually convince Trump and everyone else that they can, like, be safe to use here?
It's definitely going to be tough. A lot of people think they'll just end up selling it, like to a company here in the U.S. I think Microsoft and Oracle, they were interested before.
So, like, TikTok could become American-owned.
Yeah, maybe. But even then, it's not like a sure thing because the big worry is still, China. Even if it's an American company, people are still going to be worried about what the Chinese government might do.
So even with a new owner, the doubt's still going to be there.
Probably. And that's why the ban could still happen, for good. If Trump and everyone else don't buy what TikTok's selling, they might just say, nope, shut it down.
Wow. So it's like TikTok is in this weird waiting room, just like stuck.
Mhm.
But okay, let's say they do figure it out, like the ban goes away or they make a deal or whatever. Do you think people will trust them again? Like users and the government?
That's a good question. I think it depends. Like, first, they got to be totally upfront about everything, tell everyone exactly how they handle data and show everyone that all those worries about security, they're fixed.
So no more secrets.
Exactly. They got to prove that no one in China can, like, peek at that data.
But even then, some people are still going to be like, nope, not trusting you.
Yeah, probably. This whole thing, it's definitely hurt TikTok's image. It's gonna take time to build that trust back up.
It's like when you break someone's trust.
Right.
Like, even if you say sorry and try to fix things, it's never the same.
Yeah, I get that. And things change so fast online. New apps come out all the time. What's hot today might be like ancient history tomorrow.
So even if TikTok does come back, it might not be the same TikTok.
Right. And I think this whole thing is a good reminder for everyone who uses social media. Like, we got to be more aware, what are these apps doing? What are they doing with our info?
It's like we've been living in this, like, digital world without any rules, and now suddenly there are rules.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And honestly, I think we're just at the beginning of figuring all this out. As technology gets, like, more intense and social media becomes, even more a part of our lives, it's only going to get trickier. Like, how do we balance privacy, security, and all that with, freedom?
It's like we're in this new world now where the lines are all blurry and the stakes are, like, way higher.
Totally. And it makes you think, like, what's next? What are the big questions we got to figure out? And who gets to decide? Is it the governments or these tech companies or, like, us, the people who use this stuff every day?
Big questions. And maybe we don't have the answers yet, but I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive for today.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a long one.
It has. But I hope everyone listening has a better idea now of, like, what's going on with this whole TikTok situation. It's definitely complicated.
It is. Lots of layers.
And if there's one thing you take away from all this, it's this. Pay attention to what you do online. Be careful with your information. And remember, these platforms, they have a lot of power, for good and for bad. So stay informed and be part of the conversation.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into, the TikTok ban.
Yeah.
And everything that goes with it. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.